Good Thursday morning, everybody. It's nice to have you aboard. And we got all kinds of stuff going on. The ACC has not yet decided what they're going to do with Stanford, Cal, and SMU, although Pete Thamel, our buddy from Yahoo Sports, seems to think that it's coming soon. So it's not an if, it's a when at this point, I think. And so we'll see how that comes together. I had an opportunity yesterday to chat with the NBC crew that's going to be doing Big Ten football, and Todd Blackledge has been a friend for a long time. Todd, of course, Penn State grad, and he's been on CBS, he's been on ESPN, he's been on just most of the networks now, and he's now the guy who we will be seeing on the NBC show. So that's gonna be fun. So 100% you want to be paying attention to that, and we will be watching there too. So the crew for NBC's football games is going to be Noah Eagle. Now, Noah is the son of Ian Eagle, Todd Blackledge, and Catherine Tappan. Noah, by the way, this week will be in Ireland, where he'll be doing the Notre Dame game against Navy. So he will be back for the second, which of course is West Virginia and Penn State, and that's used to be a rivalry a long time ago. But here we go. Good morning, KJ. What you got going? Good morning. If they get down to the Pac-2, how do financial distribution systems coming year any future financial distributions? Okay, the way it usually works, and this is what I've seen, the distributions, even for the schools leaving, okay, there's a staggered time of I think about 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years, where they get what's called units, and that's what the NCAA calls them. And the units go to the conference then distributes the units out to the individual schools. So even though they will be gone, USC, UCLA, Arizona State, Oregon, Washington, and possibly now Cal and Stanford will continue to get what they when they were in the conference, what they would get in the conference, and that would be through this year. Then they wouldn't get any more, because that if it works out that Oregon State and Washington State are the only two staying, and they're not going to rebuild the conference, they would get an extra 2 years. So potentially, given what's all going on, Washington State and Oregon State would be able to walk away, splitting give or take maybe $150 million. The rest of the money goes to the problems that they had with the Comcast situation. So that's about $50 million. There's a suit going on with the Holiday Bowl, which I'm not sure whether that is strictly going to be a PAC problem, or that's a PAC problem with the UCLA problem. So I'll have to do a little more research on that one. But basically, the PAC would probably go away, at which point in time the monies would be paid out to the universities. And then, as I said, the grant of rights has a clause in it where that if you do move, your grant of rights payments only extend to the period of time when you physically exit the conference. So that's why the dates are like that. So yeah, they'll get money, absolutely get money, as will some of the teams, as I said, who are leaving. So there's not going to be as much money there as a lot of people think, but they're going to need that money to pay off Comcast and then any bills that they may or may not have. So we'll have to see how that works out. But it's a good question, KJ. We'll have that. I'll do a little more research, but I think I can't give you the exact dollar figure, but I'll be back and bring some more to it. Okay. If FAU leaves the ACC, the backfill, they could backfill. I don't know if that's the plan, because they could play this. Depends on when SMU needs to get out. My guess is, if it were me, it's not, but if it were me, I would say Liberty, App State, or Georgia State. Any one of those three would be a good ad. Liberty might be a little polarizing because it's a religious institution, much like Notre Dame and BYU, which is why it took them so long, to get into a conference. Army has been offered opportunities to join the American. They've turned them down. Army likes playing as an independent, and they do play football as an independent. And they play all their other sports in Patriot League, which is the same thing that Navy does. Army and Navy play in the Patriot League for all their Olympic sports, but they play football. Army as an independent, and Navy as a member of the American. Liberty could be a sleeping giant if they're willing to take that on. App State has always been, a quality program, and in many ways, App State is like East Carolina, right? I mean, there's a lot to like about how they've been giant killers, and they've been really solid in the conference over a period of time. So that would be a bad thing. Georgia State, that's kind of like a up and coming school. It's a commuter school in Atlanta. The Atlanta area is pretty much saturated at this point, of course, with the University of Georgia, and then of course Georgia Tech. So I would be, if it were me, I would probably list it 1 through 3. If I were picking, I would list Liberty 1, App State 2, and then Georgia State 3 if they had a backfill. So that's where I'd go with that. What do we got here? Okay. Okay. We just basically the same question. Sorry. Yeah, that's where we would go with it. It looks very much like now that Stanford and Cal and SMU are going to get into the ACC. There's just some things going on here that take a little time, and they're working on it. Interesting interview, and I will. I'll put the link in the show later, and you guys can come back and look at it. I don't know if you saw it. Dan Patrick did an interview with Jack Schwarbuck. Jack's the AD at Notre Dame, and they are, of course, playing this weekend against Navy over in Dublin, Ireland. And Dan asked him, what would be, a way that Notre Dame would have to get into the playoffs. Excuse me, not the playoffs, into a conference. And it was a matter of him saying, well, look, if NBC didn't pay us money, or no one else paid us money, in other words, he couldn't get a TV contract, well, then they would have to look for, joining a conference. Dan pinned him down to try to say, well, which conference would it be? And he goes, well, we have our Olympic sports in the ACC. We play hockey in the Big Ten, but, I wouldn't rule out, any other conference. Well, Notre Dame would never go to the SEC, so that does rule out a conference. So the Big Ten and, of course, the ACC would be those conferences, but we don't expect that to happen anytime soon. But I thought it was pretty interesting what Jack Schwarbuck said. He also advocated very strongly for Stanford and Cal and SMU to join the ACC. He just thinks that's a good thing for the conference. So we'll see how that plays out. But as I said, the tide seems to be turning in the direction of adding Stanford, Cal, and the gang at SMU to the ACC. We have some week 0 games coming up this weekend. Is there which one of them would you guys want to see? I mean, there's let's take a quick look at the week 0 games that we've got posted here. Now, we already said it, Notre Dame. So you got Ohio at San Diego State. That's going to be on FS1 at 7 o'clock. You've got Navy at Notre Dame. That's going to be on NBC. That's the game we talked about earlier. It's going to be in Ireland. Should be a very interesting matchup there. San Jose State and USC. That's an 8 o'clock start. That's on the Pac-12 network. And so that's actually the highest rated team, being USC, rated as number 6. So they're going to be taking on a pretty interesting San Jose State team. Hawaii Vanderbilt, that game is on the SEC network at 7:30. UTEP at Jackson State, that's 5:30 on CBS Sports Network. Louisville and Louisiana Tech and FIU. That game is on CBS Sports Network at 9 p.m. UMass and New Mexico State's a 7 p.m. kickoff on ESPN, and that's that's the handful of games we have on week 0. Anything there that excites you guys? From that standpoint, we've got Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is playing against Navy. The triple option seems to always give some of these teams some grief, but you never know. It's going to be kind of fun. Let me ask you this one, folks. What is the one game that you're looking forward to this season? Maybe your team versus whatever, or just maybe a game that has nothing to do with a team that you're rooting for, but you're very excited about seeing them play each other. To me, a couple of them are actually rivalry games. Last year, Pitt played against West Virginia in resuming the backyard brawl, and that game was a great game. It turned out really nice. This game is played in Pittsburgh. This year it'll be down in Morgantown, so all kinds of wackiness is going to go from that standpoint. So I know that the Morgantown, West Virginia crowd is really ready for Pitt to show up there. So going to be fun to watch that. So that's one for me. I guess one of the interesting ones this year possibly could very well be again a rivalry game, and that would be USC and Notre Dame. If USC is as good as the pundits seem to think they are, and Notre Dame is as good as the pundits seem to think they are, you could have two teams that at that point could be playing for a playoff berth in the CFP. So that's possible. So there's some really good opportunities there in that game. But at the end of the day, we'll have to see how it plays out. And right now, we don't know. We have no idea. Let's talk about, okay, so you got your games that you want to watch this weekend. You got the game that you're going to watch in the future. So what's going on? Let's go back to Twitter here real quick and get some guesses of what's going on. And let's see. What do we got? Questions. Tongus says, this may be a high legal maneuvering, but it'd be interesting to see how change the circumstances could give a legal challenge to a grant of rights if they add people to it. BJ has a situation where he says that television money isn't based on wins and losses, it's based on viewership. Even during a 4-year stretch, that was the worst stretch in 4 years, resulting in fewer primetime games. FSU still dominated the only thing that matters, and that, of course, is the TV viewership in the ACC. I don't think that anybody's arguing about whether or not they've got a good value, but it's a matter of how they're approaching it that I think most people are kind of tired of, but we'll see. Hey, Buckshot, good to see you, buddy. And also good to see you, Greg. Flying from home in Scottsdale to Charlotte to see, South Carolina and next weekend. That'll be good. Meeting your brother there from the Carolinas. That's going to be that should be an interesting game, Greg. glad that you get to, get a chance to go back to Charlotte, see the family, and you and your brother get to go to the game. It's going to be fun. I'm sure that's going to be one of the games you want to see this year. And we've been talking to everybody about games that they want to see this year. Now, maybe a game that you have, like in this case, South Carolina, North Carolina, where you have a bit of a rivalry game. But what about what games on the slate are games you guys want to see? Because we definitely have a lot of games this season. There are going to be some fun games. So thanks, Greg. That's good luck on flying home and enjoying that with your brother. It's going to be a good game next week. Does the AAC have a chance? They do. They do very much have a chance. I've spoken to people around the American, and they very much thought it would be a good idea to try to get Stanford, Cal, and Washington, Oregon State into the American. Obviously, it looks like that's not going that way. But both the Mountain West and the American are going to take a very strong play to put both of those teams in their conference. We'll see how it works. I mean, definitely pros and cons, but I think the American does have a very strong chance to land those two programs, and that would be a good upgrade. That would definitely be a good upgrade. So yeah, Rob, stay in touch. We'll keep you posted on that. Justin, how are you this morning? Lots of mainstream media reports now that the ACC is closer than ever to adding. Would be a surprise if it didn't happen now. Okay, Justin, I think I don't think anything surprises us anymore, right? I mean, we've seen all kinds of interesting situations pop up. That being said, okay, as the old saying is, I'm saying that to say this. I do think the momentum is moving in the ACC's direction to accepting those three. I really think that it's something they'll figure out the money aspect of it, but at the end of the day, I think that maybe as early as this week or middle of next, it can't be a whole lot longer. We'll probably see them in the ACC. Who do they replace them with, or how do they replace SMU, if at all? I would think we talked about that a little earlier. I would say there's three schools that could be on the radar. There was brought up, earlier. And it's, App State, Liberty, and Georgia State. Though any one of those three schools probably get there. It's going to be an interesting situation there, but for sure, they've got options, and there's a lot of schools that want to be in the American. So let's see how that plays out, right? And I do think, would I be surprised? Never surprised, but I do think it's going to happen this time. Good question, Justin. Let's go over here. Hey, how you doing? The only backfill scenario that increases the AAC's money potential would be Washington and, yes, Oregon State, Washington State. If they do so, then I would pursue top 3 or 4 from the West round. Yeah, the Mountain West thing, you'd have to wait until their deal is up, which is 2 years from now. And so, yeah, I think that's what we have to check and see what's going on in that regard. But hang on just a second. I have a technical issue here. There we go. All right. Oregon State and Washington State are targets. I mean, there's no question. Both the Mountain and the American want them. So there'll be a hard press from both the Mountain and the American to get them. And if you did what you said, if we could do what you say, the Mountain West, taking 3 teams from the Mountain West to 5 would definitely put up a pretty good Western division. So we'll see how that works out. That would be a good way to do it. And potentially, we'll see the money and see how the money deal works. So yeah, I mean, it would be, if I'm the American, I want to be as aggressive as possible. Commissioner Oresco is, that kind of guy. So I think that I would agree with you that let's get those. If I'm the American, I want to get those two schools, under my wing and explain to them how our next contract could be, more lucrative. So we'll see how that works out. And it would also give them, by the way, it would also give them, you know, four time zones, which they don't have right now, and that would be a good thing for the American too. So, and more money opportunities for both, bringing on. And those are Power Five schools, so they should very well be definitely. Excuse me, just for a second. I'll be right. Sorry about that, gang. I apologize. Let's see. So yeah, we were right there. Right, here we go on to the next one. And the question is, the only thing I've learned in the last month is expect the unexpected. Absolutely. That is really the truth. And there's no such thing as logic anymore. Yeah. There, I mean, it's bizarre. Um, I mean, teams that, um, teams that from a regional standpoint have for years been, in the game, so to speak, aren't anymore, and it's just things that you're used to. I mean, nobody likes change, okay, unless it's something that's changed for the good. I don't see how this, in any way, shape, or form, is change for the good. It's change for money, but it's not changed necessarily for the good because you're taking people regionally out of their places and putting them in places that it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for you know teams from the West Coast to go all the way to the East Coast to play sports. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's being driven by the concept that we have a national conference now because that's what the Big Ten is, and the SEC stayed true to its footprint for the most part. The one outlier being Missouri, but for everything else, it's pretty much the same footprint. And I think it's really kind of an odd way to go, and it's going to. I don't know that it's going to kill college sports, but it's not going to help it when you have to go from Los Angeles to New Jersey to play to play a baseball game. That makes no sense whatsoever. But anyway, what do we got? Jim Phillips has preached for months that while they want to close the gap, being third is not a bad place. If Yahoo Sports reports are true that the new revenue would be 72 million, that strengthens the third place. That's true. It absolutely does. It does keep them in there. And frankly, if they get the opportunity to post and do better in moving up in that, there might be a way to keep South Carolina and Clemson not not to cause as much grief as they've been causing, as well as obviously Florida State. So it's Phillips. I think that's why Phillips wants this to go. I mean, I think Phillips has really been pushing for Stanford, Cal, and SMU just to get more teams in the conference and to expand it. I mean, everybody else did, so they're a little late to the party, but they are in the party at this point. So that's a good question, Justin. Joseph, how are you? The Mount West Conference has the advantage to land WSU. Very limited chances. West is all around better athletic conference. I don't know that I would say that. I mean, if you're going logically, Joseph, Washington State and Oregon State to the Mountain West would be logistically to play, but don't count the American out. They have a very balanced conference, and I think that we'll see how things go. And I don't think there's that much difference between the two, the Mountain West and the American. So I think we have to be careful on that one. But I think it'll be fun to see how this works out. And I mean, look, Washington and Oregon State have to do what's best for them. Okay, that's the mandate. And if the best for them is to go to the Mountain, then that's what they'll do. If the best for them, if the American can make a strong enough case to say, look, guys, this is what's in your best interest, and they buy off on that, then they will. But right now, we reported yesterday that the Mountain West is having conversations with both Oregon State and Washington State, and you can bet that that Michael Resco and his folks down at the at the American are certainly not going to let it go without them giving a pitch to Washington State and Oregon State. So yeah, that would be it's going to be interesting to see where they go, and we'll find that out. I imagine a little later down the line here in this process, but certainly before the end of the football season, we're probably going to find out where Washington State and Oregon State are going to go, and it may even be in a few weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But they now have the opportunity to get pitched on by the Mountain and the Americans. So they're in a good position because I think both conferences would very much like to have them. So there you go. Moving on. Thanks for the question, Joseph. It's a good question. Soldier, how you doing, buddy? It seems that SMU, Cal, and Stanford are in. I give it an 85% now. What about you? I think that's fair. I think 85 is fair. That gives you 15% of we're not going to do it. So yeah, I think 85% is a fair share. I think that percentage is there. And I would have, we probably yesterday or the day before may have looked at it and said, maybe it's a 50-50. But I do think now that the tide has turned and that it's heading in that direction. So yeah, Soldier, I'm with you. 85% sounds about right. Justin, serious question. If these additions happen, does the ACC change their name? American Coastal Conference, the Gulf Pacific, Gulf Atlantic. There was it's interesting, Justin, that last summer there were serious conversations that George Kliavkoff, who was the Pac-12, who he still is the Pac-12 president and not the president, I'm sorry, commissioner, and Jim Phillips at the ACC, of talks about merging the two conferences, and that was going to be the Pacific and Atlantic Conference, so they could keep the PAC, the PAC together, the PAC together. And that was actually a name dreamt up by the president of the University of North Carolina. So they had these ongoing conversations about a merger years, last year before, things went south. And they even had conversations just prior to the president's making that final decision not to leave the conference. So there's been all kinds of conversations between the ACC and the PAC. So, excuse me, would they change the name? My guess is probably not, but the Atlantic and Pacific Conference might maybe they'd do it that way. Maybe they'd change it that way. But it doesn't make sense no more than it makes sense that the Big Ten has 16 teams. So what are you going to do, right? But good question, Justin. Okay, Robbie, what you got for me? I'm confident ESPN would help. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they would. They've got a pro rata deal. Pro rata deal would, if we were to bring on, say, a Liberty or something like that, would not give them the full share, which is $7 million. $4 to $5 million is what the Mountain has. So I think they might get, I'm going to agree with you on this, Rob. What they might do, Rob, is they might bump it and say, look, it's going to take us 10 or 12 to get them. And so maybe ESPN would give the American the money to spend in the investment of 2 new teams, and the 2 new teams, because they're Power 5 teams, might command a higher dollar, and they may be willing to pay it. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, that's a good one, Rob. We'll see. What do we got here? Hey, Jerry, how you doing? Please call me Jim. Just boom. Love your sports. Without agenda. Thanks for. Well, that's what we're here for, Jerry. Greatly appreciate it. And it's, I don't know everything, okay, by far, but what I want to give to you guys, because you're passionate about sports, is to give you the information and let you have an idea of where you might be able to find it. Okay, if it's not from me, I will give you links and tell you where these things are coming from, rather than just trying to give you. I know a lot of people, tout, well, exclusively here we heard that, or my sources tell me, whatever I give you is going to be from credible people who know what they're talking about. And it's always a good thing to do is to surround yourself with smart people, and they will help you. They'll help you in times of interesting and need when you want to try to answer questions. So it's really going to be fun. I appreciate what you guys are doing, because you ask good questions, and I think we learn from each other as we do this. And story I'm going to be working on soon with. Yesterday I spoke to Todd Blackledge. Todd's going to be the analyst for this year's primetime game for the Big Ten on NBC. And Todd played, of course, at Penn State, and they're going to be playing West Virginia. That's going to be on the 2nd of April. I'm sorry, 2nd of April, 2nd of September. So it's coming up next week. And I think everybody's going to be very excited to see, the rekindling of a rivalry that really, Penn State's rival was Pitt. But if there's a second rivalry, it would have been West Virginia. They used to, when they were independents, used to play each other. So quite a bit. And there's even more of a fun story to this, and I will get into it with Todd, and share it with you guys. And that is that Jeff Hostetler and Todd were both basically recruited to Penn State. They both tried out. Blackledge got the job. Hostetler didn't. Hostetler went to West Virginia. And so there was even a little bit of a rivalry between Blackledge and Hostetler when those guys played. So it's been fun in that regard. So we'll see. Todd's, of course, a very knowledgeable guy. He's been the top analyst on CBS, and he's done work, of course, with ESPN, ABC, and now he's going to be with NBC. So it'll be good. He's going to be paired with Noah Eagle, who's Ian Eagle's son. Noah's a very talented young man, and he'll be calling the game. By the way, Noah Eagle will be calling the game from Dublin this weekend when Notre Dame takes on the Naval Academy. So what do we got here? Do you think the ACC should continue to expand after Calvert and SMU? You know, Jerry, I don't know that there's right now any brands, and maybe you guys could chime in on this. Are there any brands that's going to bring more value to the ACC? And I say that because the ACC is so spread out on the coast, which is that situation for them. Where do you go to get the teams that are going to add you any value? You can't go to Florida because they've already got two teams in Florida. They've got Georgia Tech in Georgia. They've got a number of schools in North Carolina, two schools in Virginia, Massachusetts. They've got Boston. They've got upstate New York, which is Syracuse. So they've got, where do they go to get the brands, right? What's if you're going to do that, if you're going to add, then you might as well add Oregon State and Washington State, if that's the case, if you want to do that, because that would then give you, it would make some sense because you would have some, some more partners for Cal to Stanford and more on the West Coast. So, maybe that would have been the play, but I don't see that I don't see them adding any more teams, only because I don't see anybody out there at the moment that's going to add value. And you don't really want to expand if they're not expanding for added value. And right now, you could certainly argue that Oregon State and Washington State would add value, but look at how much trouble we're having getting Stanford, Cal, and SMU in here. So I don't think that they have the appetite for 5 schools. I just think if they can pull it off and get those 3 in, they'll be done. And wait until the next series of contracts. But good question, Jerry. You're back. Okay, let's see. I was thinking more along the lines of trying to poach from the Big 12. Well, the problem there is the teams there in the Big 12 have just signed a grant of rights. So you would have to get them to buy their way out of it. And right now, everybody in the Big 12 seems to be very happy. So I don't think that's going to happen right now. They've got a lot of moving parts in the Big 12. If you were going to do that, they should have done it earlier. They should, if they wanted, like I said, they could have done exactly to the pack as the same thing the Big 12 did. They could have went in, totally wiped out all the Arizona schools, Utah and Colorado, and brought all that in. If that's what they wanted to do, they could have done it. But the Big 12 beat them to it, or the Big 12, or the ACC chose not to. One of the way, however you want to look at it. I think a lot of it had to do with timing. The ACC was trying to deal with Florida State and Clemson and anybody who didn't like the payout situation that they were getting. So I'm thinking that had something to do with them not being at the head of realignment. But Jerry, someday down the line, maybe they will add more teams. But I think if they can get Stanford, Cal, and SMU, they'll be fine for the time being. But yeah, look, anything can happen, and let's see how the Big 12 and the teams in the Big 12 mesh with each other, and then we'll see if there's any reason to worry about that from a Big 12 standpoint. KJ, all right, not sure they're brands, but if the Mountain West lands Washington State and Oregon State, just going to feel this has to participate in if you're not expanding, you're falling behind. But KJ, they did add teams. Remember, they backfilled when UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston left. So they did expand. They basically decimated Conference USA. They added FAU, they added Rice, they added Birmingham, they added Charlotte. Am I forgetting anybody? It's 4 teams. UT San Antonio and North Texas. So they backfilled with 6 teams and lost 4 out of 3. So yeah, I think they've already done, you know, the what the best that they could do in adding, schools. And we said if there was one more to add, like if with SMU leaving, right? We talked about Appalachian State. We talked about Liberty. We talked about Georgia State, which is in Atlanta, all being candidates for that one spot. But yeah, I mean, um, I think Resco and the American did what they had to do, which was backfill, and they backfilled with more just in case they lost more. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, they added Birmingham, Charlotte, Rice, UT San Antonio, and FAU. So they did it, but we'll have to see. And you never know. Maybe there's something that the American does want to do with that. Maybe they waited a year or two down the line. We'll have to see. But anyway, I really think that they've got when you onboard these many teams like they have in like the Big Ten and the Big 12, it really takes time scheduling. You're not just scheduling for football, right? You're scheduling for a number of sports. So you've got scheduling, you've got travel, you've got all that to get together. And so when you onboard as many people as the American did, that's going to affect what you're doing. And when can they come on? Are they all coming together? Are they coming in waves? And so we'll see. So definitely, it's a very interesting thing. And it's a good question. Good question, KJ. Trevor, what do you got for me? They'll need to poach from any Power 5 conference, the Big 12 being most likely, or somehow Notre Dame needs to become full-time. The Jack Swarber, the Notre Dame athletic director, was on Dan Patrick. I recommend that you check it out on YouTube. He talked about, Dan asked him, would there be a way where Notre Dame would be forced to join a conference? And Swarberg said that yes. And the answer to the qualification of the answer to the yes, so the answer was that if NBC or any other broadcast network chose not to, do a deal with them, then they would be forced to look to a conference. And when Patrick, pressed a little harder, which with regard to which conference would it be, Schwarber was quick to say, well, it could be any conference. He said, it could be the Big Ten. We play hockey in the Big Ten. Could be, the ACC because we play Olympic sports in the ACC. And then he kind of alluded, well, it could be the SEC, but that's not going to. Notre Dame to the SEC is not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, he laid the option out. Now, that being said, Pete Bavacqua, who is president of NBC Sports right now, is going to be leading that post, and he's going to be, the athletic director at Notre Dame. So I would think that Pete knows Notre Dame well enough to know that it's something they don't want to lose. So for good reason. So I think that's going to be the negotiation there. I think Notre Dame's going to take anything north of 50 million per year. I know they aspire to more, but you're only paying for 6 to 7 games a year, so you're not getting a full, and you're not getting any other rights. Okay, so you're paying $50 million a year just for football. And I think that's where people get kind of hung up on what's going on, right? Because they'll say, well, look, the SEC is getting $60 million, per school, for rights. Well, yeah, but the SEC is not only giving it, they're not just football rights. Those are rights to basketball and all the Olympic sports. So it's not just one, amount of money going to the rights deal. So, to your point, Trevor, Notre Dame will be an independent in and until the a network chooses not to pay them. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, and frankly, who knows? It might be sooner as opposed to later. But if they do, I don't know. They had a really good when there was the COVID year play. They actually fit in the ACC pretty well. So maybe this to the Big Ten thing, is not necessarily a slam dunk. Maybe maybe they might feel comfortable in the ACC. We'll have to see, but anything's possible, guys. Anything's possible. Okay, you think from a power perspective, Notre Dame has the most to gain from becoming a full? Well, yeah, they probably could. And there was a series back when you guys probably recall when Lou Holtz was the coach at Notre Dame. He and Bobby Bowden were very good friends. So they played each year with each. They played each other for a number of years while both were independents, and as did Miami. So it was pretty impressive that they had some really good games between those schools. So then they would be friends and family, and probably if Notre Dame joined the ACC, that could probably jack the price up to a point where they could be making as much money to keep Florida State and Clemson happy. So if that were to come to pass, if Notre Dame could become available and could come to the ACC, I'm quite sure that Disney and the gang would find more money for the ACC, and very, very well could be a landing spot. So, as I said, listening to Schwarber on the Dan Patrick show, I really think was eye-opening in how he explained it. I mean, he didn't dodge the question at all. He said, if we don't get what we need out of the network, well then, our options are to look at a conference, and he made very interesting cases for both. So yeah, I wouldn't rule out a move eventually to the ACC from the big from independence for Notre Dame, because as you say, they can practically run the conference. They've got a vote now, and they don't even have the football team isn't even in the conference. So yeah, I would think that Notre Dame would have that. That would not be the case in the Big Ten. Notre Dame would just be another one of a group. So we will see how that plays out. But for sure, guys, that was Trevor. That's a good question, and we'll figure it out. All right, boys and girls, we're getting close to the end today. If you have any other questions, please bring them on. We've got time for one or two more. Then also, if you do me a favor, and that is subscribe, hit the bell, and like us, that would be a great help to all of us. And really, some really great questions from all you guys here today. And we have for tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but also start talking about some actual broadcasts of games. We'll talk to you about who the announcers are going to be, what the games are, and where they're going to be played, where you'll be able to find them. And so we'll give you all that TV Insight stuff tomorrow on the Friday show. It's always going to be a TV centric show where you can find it, whether you want to stream it, whether you want to watch it on linear television or watch it on your phone. We will show you how to and tell you how to do it. Then we'll start bringing in some of our guests, which will be some broadcasters and some directors, producers, and folks who are involved in how this stuff all works out. Okay, so we got another question, KJ. If Washington State and Oregon State don't do something very soon, how are they going to find teams to play in 2024? That's a good question. I would think that they might be able to, if we're talking about, let's say they meaning Washington State and Oregon State, say we need a little. Remember the NCAA gives them 2 years to reform a conference. Not reform it, but add to it to get to 8. They could potentially say, well, look, we're going to come to the Mountain West, or we're going to come to the American, but we need some time. Both conferences need time, as well as the 2 institutions need time to put all that together. Okay, they could then do a short-term scheduling deal where the Mountain West would put up the number of teams. They could schedule games in the Mountain West, or they could schedule games in the American for that transition year. So that would be one way of doing it, and I think that would probably be the easiest way to do it for them, because that way they would be working with potentially the partner that they would be joining in the long run. So I think both commissioners of the Mountain and the American would be more than happy to try to figure out a way to make that work for them, and to assimilate them into the conference, in 2025. But the 2024 would be the transition year, where they're just trying to get everybody used to traveling up to the Pacific Northwest, and vice versa for the people at the up there. But yeah, so it could be done, and it could be done by the Mountain West. It could be done by the American. I think they would be more than happy. And even if they hadn't made their minds up yet, which would be kind of inconceivable, because in June of 2021, I'm sorry, 2024, they June of 2024. Man, what is it today? June of 2024 would be the time that they would have to have that figured out. And right now, as I said, I think their best bet is either the Mountain or the American. I don't think that they really have a taste for trying to reconstruct, the Pac, 2.0 with those 2 schools. That would be a little bit of a heavy lift with both. Let's say Stanford and Cal would have stayed, right? And we're assuming for the moment that they're going to the ACC. That would have been a heavy lift regardless. So, we're going to have to see how that plays out. So we'll see. So back to your point. The back to your point, that schedule wouldn't take long to write up. That's for sure. It would be we can put that on the back one now. Okay, here's what you're presenting. Okay, Washington State. State. That's a good, okay, fine. That would work, right? Okay. Yeah. Makes it simple. And look, you're just basically playing. Yeah, it would that would be a good one. That's a good one. Tell you what, folks, let's end on KJ's good plan, by the way, KJ, to work out the problems of scheduling in 2024. All right, gang. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for coming by today. If for some reason you didn't get your question answered, or you have a comment, or you think of something during the course of the day, you can always come back, click on the link. It'll take you right to it. You can leave the comment or the question or whatever, and I'm more than happy to answer it. All right. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. Okay. And have a wonderful day, and get ready for some football, because it's coming up very soon.